Had a great opportunity this week with two terrific teams coming in here. Obviously starting with VCU on Wednesday, which is where our focus is. We were off on Saturday, and on Sunday, yesterday we spent a lot of time together in our locker room, getting on the same page in terms of the way we want to approach the games, the way we want to approach each other. Just a reset of sorts. Coming off of a really tough game on Friday. Our guys' attitudes have been really good and practiced extremely hard. But obviously the biggest component of it is taking that and going on Wednesday and carrying it over. And I think it's all about us being what we talk about and what we preach and what we work on, and not getting away from that if the ball's not going in or certain results aren't happening, whether it's as a team or individually. It's that time of year where reality sets in a little bit for individual players that, this season hasn't necessarily individually gone exactly how maybe you envisioned it. Every player envisions a 10 out of 10 season, and unfortunately that just doesn't happen for the majority of guys. I would love it if it did, but our guys are working through that and understanding that the biggest key to improving your season is getting better, and that's where we're at right now.
Yeah. What happened Friday?
Well, I think the biggest thing that happened, Brian, is we got off to a pretty good start. So I don't think that our guys were flat coming into the game. We were up, I believe, 12, about a quarter of the way into the game. But we did not sustain the level of energy or commitment to our process, mostly on the offensive end, but overall, that we needed to have. And we missed some open shots. We forced too many outside shots. And Radford did a nice job, obviously cutting the lead down to 1 at the half. And then I felt like the whole second half, we were playing almost as if it was, a possession game, but there's 15 minutes left in the game, or 12 minutes left, or 8 minutes left, as opposed to just going to play basketball and not being so concerned about the time or the score or whether the last ball went in or not. You got to give Radford a lot of credit, but at the same time for us, there's a lot of things we look at, and we just need to do better, and we need to carry over better. Again, we were way too dependent on outside shooting. There was almost a stubbornness with that. And I get it from the standpoint of if you're a good player and you feel like, hey, this is a shot I can jump up and make, and you've spent a lot of time working on it, you want to go do that. But at some point, if it's not going in, you gotta do something different, and you got to attack. And that's something that we spent a lot of time talking about during the game. And yesterday, we watched every single offensive possession from that game and just looked at how we could have done a better job as a team, making them play for longer on defense, making them defend the paint more. So that's definitely an area of emphasis moving forward.
Do you, after something like that, the team that played against Arkansas, the team that played against North Carolina, are you turning tables over? Are you punching drywall? Are you punching them? Because it seems like
can't do that.
Maybe you could. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe you could. I don't know. But
did you watch the Bobby Knight documentary?
I lived it. I lived some of it. So, but yes, it's early in the season. I get that. But did you have a level of anger with them? Like, what are y'all doing?
Absolutely, and our whole coaching staff did. And it's one of those things where when you have a team that has a lot of potential and you feel like you can become a terrific team, then when you take a step backwards, whether it's in a game or a practice, but certainly in games, it's one of those things that's infuriating. And I told our guys, it's got to matter as much to you guys as it does to us. Now, I do I do think our guys really, really care and want to be good. Sometimes that actually can work against us because they put a level of pressure on themselves to avoid a negative result. And you don't want that when you're shooting a three in the corner and you're wide open. But what has to improve is the commitment to, regardless of what's happening over the course of a game, the process that goes into what we want to go get. I think it's a natural tendency, it's human nature when things are not going your way to maybe get off the page or do something a little bit different, but we have to fight that. And the best teams are able to do that. The best teams are able to fight that. And as you said, it's early in the year, but whether it's early, the middle, the end, that's what makes the best teams the best. And that's something that we have to become. And I think we're capable of doing that, but it starts with our older guys that have been around a little while. And those guys have to lead the way, and then, the freshmen have to grow up.
Along those lines, you mentioned settling for perimeter shooting. I think you guys are like 31st nationally in the amount of threes taken. You'd probably agree that's too high, probably. Well, how do you get that to change? Because now that we're 7 games in, there has been a trend of these guys often settling for perimeter shots.
Well, I think a couple things. And it's a fine line because a lot of them have been open, and sometimes it's a result of how you're defended. So in other words, if someone on defense says, okay, we're literally going to put 5 guys in the paint and you're not coming in here, then that's the shot that a lot of people are going to shoot. And Radford, with the way that they defended, Michigan State with the way that they defended, it wasn't necessarily 5 in the paint, but it's a version of that. With that being said, one thing that we spent a lot of time talking about yesterday and working on in practice is an emphasis on not necessarily taking those shots as early and making the defense work, trying to work to get the ball in the paint first. And, I think that can lead to getting to the foul line more often. I told Snoop, I said, hey, man, when you were a freshman, you got to the foul line a ton. You got to the foul line as much when you were a freshman as you are right now, but you're playing twice as much now. I think certainly continuing to emphasize to these guys, we have to drive more. We have to throw the ball in the post at times. When we do get the ball in the post, we got to be more aggressive. There was times against Radford where the ball went in, but we didn't make an aggressive move. And that's probably worse than shooting an open three because you're not going to get to the foul line. It's just not a high percentage shot. So, if guys are honoring that and following that plan, I think that we can shoot a higher percentage. If they're not, then they got to come out, and someone else has got to go in and try to make that happen.
Is there a way of doing that? I know you guys want to move the ball and get it moving around quick, but at times you feel like maybe more often, hey, call an ISO for a guy just to force him to want to go at the paint? Yeah,
again, depending on how the defense is guarding you. And we did that. You saw us do that with Jericho a couple times. The first time he dunked it, and then the second time he shot a floater from the foul line, which, we watched on a tape yesterday with him and with the team. And guys, the first time we got the best percentage shot you possibly can get, go do it again. I think there is a growth process for some of our guys, and especially younger players, but even guys that have been around a little while, and understanding that that's exactly what you have to do right there. And our job is to pound that into their heads, and that's something that certainly has been a focus, but was even taken to a different level of urgency in terms of the amount of time we just spent watching tape and hammering it over and over and over again yesterday.
Yeah, can you explain something you touched on before, that decision-making that you're talking about? Can you explain how that happens when you have 2 seniors and a fairly experienced point guard who's a sophomore, but how do they let that happen to the team? Or should they be the ones preventing these decisions?
Well, we've actually done a pretty good job decision-making from the standpoint of handling the ball, taking care of the ball. But I think what you're referring to is choosing what shots to take. Yeah, it's I mean, I think what happens in the game is, again, there can be a stubbornness that, hey, I've made this shot over and over in practice, so I'm gonna go make it in the game. Matt Coleman, literally, if you look at our practice statistics, is I think shooting 48% from three. He's just not doing that in the game. So I think the decision, to your point, has to be a little bit different. And our job as coaches is to continue to either dictate that through specific play calls or sub. But, the guys we have are the guys we have, and we think that they're really good players. I mean, they went out and scored 92 points against North Carolina. But we have to, again, get back to honoring the pace at which we want to play. I'm not even saying necessarily shooting it fast, but the way we want to attack with execution and the way we want to share the basketball. And then some of them, to be honest with you, are open, good shots that we're just going to need to make.
You mentioned guys making them in practice, but like you said, despite the overall percentage for the season, there have been games or halves this year where they hit a bunch of threes. Do you think that also influences them to say, I know I just made this last week?
Absolutely. I mean, they know that they're capable of making it. It's just a matter of getting to the point where they consistently do so. Part of it is shooting the ball with a mentality of going after making a shot as opposed to shooting it not to miss. And that's something as a player, we can work on and we can try to drill and practice, but it's not quite the same as when you're in a game. Our guys, hopefully are going to settle into a rhythm and understand, like, hey, I can make this shot. And it's not the weight of the world on my shoulders if I do or don't, but over the course of a game, that we should be able to shoot the ball a lot better if you take that mentality.
It's probably, Jericho's best game of the season. I think, it seemed like he was playing with maybe the sort of, controlled aggression that y'all have sort of, wanted to see from him. So is that the sort of, not chaotic, but, looking for maybe the rebounds, looking for his own shot a little bit? And when he's like that, how do you sort of get his energy to sort of infect everybody else at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, we keep working and working and working on that, and that's going to be a process, a work in progress. I think Jericho is a long way from being the player that he's someday going to become. So our job is to move him closer to that as fast as we can and to support him. I think he did take a step on Friday, just being a little bit more aggressive. He's been getting a lot of extra work in outside of practice on different situations on the floor, whether it's catching the ball in the long post and facing up and making a move, or scoring from the elbow like he did. I think it was the second play of the game when he had that dunk. So the work is certainly something that he's not afraid of, and he's something that he's doing. My big point of emphasis to him is when you're doing that and when you're playing well, like he did in times on Friday, like you said, trying to affect the guys around you. It's not an individual sport where it's just, okay, I'm going out there and I'm going to make this play. It's how else can I affect other guys? I think everyone here knows he's not the greatest communicator in the world, but he's not a freshman anymore, so we need more of that. And that's been a real emphasis from his teammates to him, and it's something that we'll continue to push him to do.
Yeah, kind of, going off that, another guy that, Dylan's been sort of up and down this season, but it seems like regardless, he's been able to at least really affect the game on the glass. Does he? It seems like he's maybe a little bit of a different rebounder this year. He's maybe more active. Is that just because of all the work that he did in the offseason? He's maybe a little leaner and lighter and able to bounce around? I
think that helps him. I think just an aggressiveness to go after the ball helps him when he's in that mindset. And he's had some games this year where he's really done a good job of that. He's had a couple other games where he's lost that. So, again, it's building a consistent mentality every play, every day of I'm going after the ball. But you can do that and you can be really, really effective in terms of scoring the basketball if you're Dylan. I think he's capable of that. Again, it's the biggest thing is him making sure he's staying true to the things we work on as a team, and specifically at his position, finishing off 2 feet around the basket instead of taking off of one, being on balance when he does make a post move, attacking the basket as opposed to fading away. Those are some of the things that he'll work on a daily basis on the end of the floor with the bigs, and he can continue getting better carrying that over.
Kind of an interesting back-to-back with Friday, Radford, and one of your best friends, and then now your former school, probably some emotions that wouldn't go into an average game. How do you kind of handle that and still trying to get a victory?
Just focus on the team. Yeah, just focus on the guys and, the preparation, which is similar to any other preparation. I think for us, we have obviously a valuable game film from last year when we played VCU. Their personnel is somewhat different and better. Our personnel is certainly different in some ways, but there are some things that occurred in that game that we can take and learn from, and I'm sure they'll look at it the same way. But our focus is 99% on ourselves, just because whether we're coming off a phenomenal win against North Carolina or we're coming off Friday's game against Radford, it needs to be a self-reflection of what are the things that have brought us success, what are the things that we've gotten away from that we want to focus on, and making sure that that's at the front of our minds.
Do you roll that all together when you're trying to maybe fix some things but also get ready for a VCU and a Purdue on Sunday?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, when you're playing good teams, it reduces your margin for error, but you still don't have to play perfect. You just have to play your style of basketball and your brand of basketball and try to do the best you can to beat Texas. I think when we've played what we call Texas basketball, all the things we're talking about take care of themselves. The problem that we have right now is our guys are still learning what it takes to go into being consistently that. And we have to learn faster, because the games keep coming. For us, practice has been, a really good laboratory for these guys, but we're certainly still not at the point where we can consistently carry over in the game what we've done in practice. That has to start happening more and more.
Coach, how has Neil Berry helped specifically on the offensive end so far this season, and has he been that voice that you kind of thought you were going to get when you hired him back in May?
Neil's been great. He's done a great job with our guys. Very, very hard worker. He's constantly evaluating what we're doing on that end of the floor and giving me feedback. He's very, very passionate about it. Neil's a guy who's his personality is very easygoing. He's very easy to get along with, but he has a real fire inside about playing the game of basketball the right way, sharing the basketball, moving the ball. So he's given me some really good stuff, and what he and I are both working hard on is getting our guys to the point where they have a full understanding of exactly how to go carry that over, regardless of what the other team does. We've played against some really different defenses, which has maybe changed, what looks are there. But the core components of what we're trying to do offensively, those are things we want to focus on every game.
Any follow-up, Robert? Additional questions?
Are there things, I think you may have mentioned this, but are there things you can do structurally, offensively, to get guys maybe to get better twos instead of settling for the threes you mentioned?
Yes.
Like you said, moving the ball or swinging it or whatever.
Yeah, I think getting the ball to multiple sides more often. Just getting the ball in the paint, making that a point of emphasis. I mentioned the play call we made for Jericho a couple times in the first half of the Radford game. That's just a play for him to drive the ball, and be aggressive with it. He almost always gets in the paint when we do that, whether it's in practice or in a game. So That's probably the biggest thing we can do. But at the same time, as a basketball player, you're always going to take the way the defense is defending you into account, and you should do that. So for us, it's a combination of playing the way that we want to play, and our guys making the right reads. I think, when we go to our pick and roll action, our roll man is open sometimes. We're not throwing it to him as much as we need to. That's been a point of emphasis. Our guys are getting better at it, but it's still something we need to look at, because that obviously puts the ball deep around the basket if we are able to complete that pass.
Anything else? Thank you all.
Thank you, guys.